Hi again, everybody. My name is Greg Anderson, and this is the Good Timekeeping Show with Greg Anderson. Now, some people have asked me over the years, oh, you like Casio watches. Do you have a calculator watch? And I'd say, no. I'd say, well, how can you be a big fan of Casio watches and not have a calculator watch? It's one of the things they're most famous for. It's one of their most famous watches. Why, Marty McFly in Back to the Future had a calculator watch. Why don't you have a calculator watch? And I thought, all right, you're right. You're absolutely right. I should have a calculator watch. So here, I finally got one. So here it is, Casio's CA-53W, module 3208, made in China. This is it. This is actually the watch they used in Back to the Future Part 2 and Back to the Future Part 3. And actually, Marty McFly wore a CA-50 watch in Back to the Future Part 1. So a little bit of a continuity error there that for no good reason, Marty McFly changed watches to a watch that was not yet available in 1985 when he was in the 2 sequel movies. But they look the same, have the same functions. And so, all right, let's talk about this watch. Again, a classic. The basic design and model comes from the late 1980s. This module is a little bit updated because this one gives you dates through the 2000s, but otherwise it's the same watch, and it just has that great 1980s styling. Now, I'm old enough to remember when, like, calculators were restricted in school. Your math teacher didn't want you to use a calculator. He wanted you to figure it out in your head and, write down, show your work with a number 2 pencil on the piece of paper. And calculator was almost considered cheating back then. So if a kid could get a calculator on his watch, that was kind of an interesting way to sneak a calculator into school. But I'm a little bit older as far as sneaking calculators into school. But anyway, I just kind of never saw the need for a calculator watch. But it is an interesting little thing. Also, those little buttons with my big fingers. But you know what? It's not so bad here. So let's try this out. Okay, this is your main timekeeping mode. Obviously, you've got the local time and the day of the week there. This is a water-resistant watch. So it's not rated for like 50 meters or even 30 meters. It's just water-resistant. So you can splash a little bit of water on it, wear it while you're washing your hands. But I just wouldn't leave it submerged in water. And you should be fine as far as water resistance goes. So let's explore the calculator mode. And really, this is a throwback to a typical calculator from the 1980s. To get into the calculator mode, I push this button here, and now I'll try to do it with my big fingers on these tiny buttons. But just like your old classic calculator, you just press the buttons, and you've got up to 8 digits, and you can divide, multiply, subtract, and add right there. Also, you have the equals sign and a decimal point there. So if you're expecting a scientific calculator, with degrees and radius and cosine and pi and all that stuff, and a memory recall and all that sort of stuff, you're not going to get that on this. This is a very simple calculator, but it has everything you need there. Now, if you were to do something like try to multiply this by some huge number and you get an error, that's how that looks. And again, this is very typical of what 1980s calculators were like. To clear it, just push that button again there, and now you're cleared and you can do your next little calculation there. So there you go with the calculator. Now, if I push this button again, it's going to take me back to the kind of the home time screen. If I scroll through these different functions and I do something, the next time I push the button, it'll take me back home. So if I'm trying to get all the way over here to, say, the stopwatch, and I decide to stop in the middle and do something with the alarm, then, it's going to take me back to home. But, that's, again, typical of some older watches. So, okay. All right. So we're here. There's the calculator. Push one more time. And there is the alarm mode. Now, if I want to change the setting of the alarm, there's a small button here on the side that's a little more difficult to press because it doesn't stick out like that one. So if I push that until things start to blink, and again, see if my big fingernails can do that. All right, it is blinking. And kind of nice here. With a lot of watches, you'd have to kind of scroll up and down with these digits here. But in this case, you can go directly to the number. So if I want to change this to, say, 12, so just push 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now it's set to 12:34. The AM PM change is accomplished by pushing the decimal button. So there you go. Now it's 12 p.m., 12 a.m., and there you go. Now if I push this tiny button there to stop it from blinking, it has activated the alarm, and I also have the hourly signal activated as well. Now in order to turn the alarm on and off when you're in this mode right here, it's the number 4. See, it's got a little arrow that points down to the number 4 digit there. So that turns the alarm on and off. As for the hourly signal, that arrow right there is pointing to the multiply button. So if I push multiply, that's the hourly signal on and off. And again, that's the alarm on and off. Now, if I push this button on the side, where is it going to take me? Back to the beginning. So now I want to go to the next mode. I push it 1, 2, 3 times, and now it's the dual time mode. So you can set this to just about anything you want. Again, push this little button down there that's a little bit harder to press, and now I just set that to just about any setting I want for my other time zone, but the seconds is going to match with the kind of the home time screen. So this is it doesn't automatically tell you what the time is going to be in another time zone. You can look that up and you can change it accordingly. Or since you can set hours and minutes to whatever you want, I kind of like this. Let's say the place where you work, the clock for the time clock where you clock in every day is, say, 5 minutes off from your regular time, right? So you can just go ahead and set this to, whatever that is, or just anything, whether it's another time zone or your own custom dual time. You've got that option right there. And again, AM or PM with the decimal button showing you that. Okay, so I'm going to stop that from blinking again and go back to home. So from here, I'll push this mode button a few times till it says stopwatch. Okay, and this is a 24-hour stopwatch. The way to start it and stop it is that button right there, the plus button, and that starts it. And it beeps when you start it. It'll beep again every 10 minutes. That's just what it does. So for the lap time or split time, push the 0 button for that. And again, it's very similar to what you would find on stopwatches on digital watches from that era. Very simple there. And as far as resetting it, you can stop it, reset there. It's a 24-hour stopwatch. So right there, you're seeing minutes, seconds, and hundredths of a second. If you want to see hours, press the divide button. See where it's got that little arrow pointing to the divide button, and that shows you how many hours. So if I were to go more than 1 hour, I would use that button to see how many hours. If it goes all the way up to 24 hours, it's going to reset to 0 and keep on going. And so there's your very simple stopwatch. And those are all the main modes and functions of this watch. Now, when you first get it to set it up, you're here in the home time screen. You want to press and hold this recessed button until things start to blink. And this is where you can reset the seconds by just hitting the 0 there. Push this button on the side to, again, go for whatever other time you want. Let's say I'm going to just reset this to whatever it happens to be. And there you can also set the date. So the year, this is, today's date, which, if it weren't correct, I could just reset it using those buttons. And it's taking me back to time. If I push this button on the side here, again, this is another way to advance through the different settings. So just, local time, the year, and the date, and that's all. That's the entire setup. And if that were the correct time and date, I guess I'm all ready to go here. Now, if I'd rather have this in 24-hour mode instead of AM, PM, it's not quite as obvious here, but what you do is you press the plus button while you're in setup mode here. And that puts you in 24-hour mode for the whole watch. Okay, so if I were to go ahead here to dual time, for example, now it's also showing me 24-hour mode instead of AM, PM. So it's not really telling you how to do that, but it's actually pretty simple. Just again, when you're in time setting mode, just push the plus to switch between 12-hour and 24-hour mode. All right, and now I guess you are good to go. That's the entire setup on the watch. Now let's just show you how this looks on my wrist compared to, this is kind of one of my diver style watches from Casio. But now let's try on the calculator watch. And it looks like that. You know, it's one of the larger watches from its day. Not a lot of extra space on this watch band, so if you have a really big wrist, this might not do for you. My wrist is about 7.5 inches, so that's how that fits. Compare that to, say, a G-Shock Square. That's how that looks on my wrist. And just put them side by side there. You can see it was a big watch for its day because it needed all that extra space for the calculator buttons. But compared to a lot of watches today, it really doesn't look that big. Now let's do an official weigh-in here. This is obviously going to be a little bit one of the lighter watches compared to a lot of watches available today. Just 24 grams. That's even lighter than something like this small W800H watch. Obviously, it's going to be lighter than, say, this right here, or even a G-Shock like this one. They're all weighing in much heavier than this very lightweight and comfortable 24 gram. Compare that to something like this Casio Duro. Wow, 91, 92 grams. Yeah, that's a significant difference now, isn't it? There's a few other important statistics on this one. First of all, the battery it uses is a lithium CR2016 battery, which should last about 5 years with normal use, up to an hour a day of using the calculator and using that alarm once a day. And then the accuracy should be plus or minus 15 seconds per month. So that's pretty good for an affordable watch. I found this for about $20. Pretty easy to find at Walmart and a whole bunch of places online. There are different color combinations out there as well, many of them with the negative display. So I like this, that it has the dark characters against a light background. The negative display, or reverse LCD, would obviously be a dark background here with light characters. And to me, that's a little bit difficult to read. So I prefer this, even though those other color combinations are kind of fun to see as well. I haven't mentioned anything so far about a backlight because it doesn't have a backlight. A lot of watches from the 80s didn't necessarily have backlights, but that's okay. It gives it that 1980s authenticity. It's a classic watch to have, and maybe, yes, if you do want to count yourself as an official fan of most things Casio or all things Casio, it probably is important to have one of these in your Casio watch collection to honor the legacy of what was in its day one of the most fun, unusual, and innovative watches you could have. All right, so that's all for now, and I've got some more watches and some more ideas and some more coming up, so please stay tuned for more episodes of The Good Timekeeping Show.